Hello, good morning, or good evening, whenever you are watching this. I hope you are doing well. My name is Catherine, and today we are going over my January reading wrap-up. To be honest, my 2023 reading year is not starting well. We're making through, and I did read some books in the month of January. In the month of January, I read 14 books. 0 of those were physical books. Obviously, I am not doing great with getting through my physical TBR. I did read 4 ebooks and 10 audiobooks. Genre-wise, every single one of my books were romances. Looking at the subgenres, 5 were historical, 5 were contemporary, 2 were fantasy, and 2 are what I would consider dark romances. Let's just jump right into these. Going genre order, starting with the historicals. All of the historicals that I read were Beverly Jenkins books. I had never read a Beverly Jenkins book before, but it has been one of my goals for a little while to read at least part of her backlist because girl has a lot of books. I started off with the Destiny series, which follows 3 brothers who grew up on a ranch in California. The first one is Destiny's Embrace. This one was narrated by Sherry Peel. I honestly didn't really like her as an audiobook narrator. She gave some weird voices to a lot of the characters. So this follows Logan Yates, who is kind of in charge of the ranch. With the urging of his mother, he hires a housekeeper for himself because he doesn't really take care of himself because he's so busy overseeing everything on the ranch. He ends up hiring Mariah Cooper, who dreams of owning her own dress shop. Of course, they don't really get along at the beginning, but there is a lot of tension between the two of them. What I did really like about this, and what I liked about all of Beverly Jenkins' book, is the history that's woven in. Because this is set in America and all of her characters are Black, you get a lot of historical context from her, and I really like how it was just woven throughout the story really naturally. I absolutely loved Mariah and Logan's chemistry. However, things just moved really, really fast between the two of them, where it did get a little bit insta-lovey, and I wasn't the biggest fan of how the dialogue was written. I felt like the dialogue was very stilted, and that kind of was a problem that I had with a lot of Beverly Jenkins books that I read. I just don't think that narration style is something I really vibe with. Also, there was a lot of points of views besides just Mariah and Logan's, and it got pretty muddled in there, especially listening to it in audio form. It was still enjoyable to read though, and I felt pretty similarly about Destiny's Surrender, which is book 2. This is narrated by Thomas Penny. This follows Andrew, who is the second brother, middle child. He is a bit of a playboy, but has decided that it is time for him to, settle down. I guess he needs to start a family, that sort of thing. He has a very to the book sort of plan. That is until Wilhelmina shows up. Wilhelmina is a prostitute that Andrew has frequently spent time with, and she has a son that she is claiming is Andrew's. I loved that our main character was a sex worker, and again, we get a lot of kind of the history of sex work in that time period, which is very interesting. Definitely a very different character from Mariah from the previous book, who is very sheltered, doesn't really know a lot. While she does deal with a lot of stigma from other people, she never gets it from the Yates family, which I just really appreciated. Again, Drew and Billy had great chemistry, but they spend so much of the book apart from each other that I feel like we don't get to see it as much as we could. So I just was really sad because I was like, why aren't we spending time with the couple that the book is supposed to be about? Finally in the series is Destiny's Captive. This is also narrated by Thomas Penny. I don't love male narrators. This follows the youngest Yates brother, which is Noah. He's a bit of a free spirit. He claims that his one true love is the open sea. He now is captain of his own ship and is looking to expand. However, his ship gets stolen by a woman. Lara almost immediately captures his ship and captures his heart. I love a good pirate story. This one was definitely my favorite of the three in the Destiny series. I think because I just loved Noah as a hero. I do love a hero who is like dealing with his own sort of stuff that he's working through. Also, Pilar is just such an interesting character. She is Cuban and had to deal with just so much growing up. Again, love the story, love the characters, love the like history that we do get in it. I don't know if it was just the writing style, but yeah, things just didn't flow as well as I wanted to, and the just like way too many POVs just kind of messed with the again, the overall flow of things. I then got started on the Old West series, the first one being Forbidden. This was narrated by Kim Staunton. I definitely liked her a lot more than the other narrators from the previous series. Edie dreams of opening her own restaurant and moving out west. However, after a series of unfortunate events in her travels, she ends up stuck in this really small mining town after being saved by Ryan. Ryan is a very successful business owner and politician in the town. However, all of his success rides on the fact that he is white passing, and everyone in town believes that he is white. I definitely liked this one more than the Destiny series. I just felt like it was a lot more focused because we did just stick to the two main characters' POV. I still felt like some of the language was really stilted, which I don't know, it was something about the way they would be like, oh yes, this happened at this time and let me explain everything, instead of just kind of like showing us certain emotions and letting the characters sit in those emotions. And it would just like jump from one thing to the next so quickly. I just wanted to spend more time with the characters, which I guess is a good thing because it meant I really, really liked the characters. I did love Edie and Ryan's whole dynamic, and of course, fantastic chemistry. Overall, that's the overarching theme of all of Beverly Jenkins' books that I've read so far, is love the characters, love the chemistry, love the relationships. The actual like storytelling itself isn't my favorite. Final one that I read is Breathless. This takes place several years later after Breathless. I think 20 years later, something like that. This follows Portia, who is Edie's niece, who comes to stay with her. She's now a manager and bookkeeper for the hotel that the family owns. She does not want to jeopardize her freedom and her career and her success for just any man, so she's constantly like rejecting proposals. Lots of guys like her, but she is not into any of them. That is until there is an old family friend, Kent Randolph, who we did see him. He was like a teen in the previous book. He comes looking for a job with Edie and Ryan, and sparks fly. I loved Portia and Kent's relationship. They're like kind of childhood friends to lovers as they like kind of relearn about each other. Portia was definitely a lot like shyer, a lot more reserved when she was younger. So seeing her and Kent just reconnect was really beautiful. The two of them definitely have this like no one sees me the way that you do type of relationship that I absolutely eat up. Moving on to contemporary romances is Well Traveled by Jen DeLuca. This is the fourth book in the sort of Well Met series. This one is narrated by Brittany Presley, who I love, one of my favorite narrators. This one follows Louisa Malone, who quit her job as a lawyer, accountant, something of that sort of nature, after she realized that she is constantly being like passed up for promotions and things like that for her male colleagues who started, after her. She just like is not happy in her job, in her life, in her career, any of that. Decides to go to the last place she was happy, which was of course the Renaissance Fair. There she sees a friend of her cousin and character that we have seen in past books, very fun. She ends up touring different Renaissance fair with the dueling kilts, a like band that sings traditional like Scottish Irish drinking songs. He goes on tour with them for a little while, completely like unplugs from everything to just rediscover like what her passion is and what makes her happy. And she ends up befriending the lead guitarist, who is a bit of a playboy, said that he has a different girl at every Renaissance fair. I enjoyed this just as much as the other books in the series. I just think it's really fun. I really just enjoy the environment and vibe of the Renaissance fair. However, my one thing is, I don't think it was really a romance. The book itself focused so much more on Louise's journey and her like self-discovery. And while we do get like bits of the romance between her and Dex, it really isn't the main focus of the story, which is totally fine. It just isn't what I expect going into it, especially when, you know, all the other books, main focus is the romance. This one, not so much. But again, love the Renaissance fair vibes, and the bits of the romance that we do get is very sweet. Next is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cotran. This is narrated by Natalie Noundes, who just, again, absolute fantastic, one of my favorite narrators. This follows Ellie, who had a one-night stand on Christmas Eve and just totally fell in love with this girl, but she never sees her again after that Christmas, after kind of some things happen. A year later, her life is just totally falling apart. Nothing is working out for her. She desperately needs money. She ends up agreeing to this sort of marriage of convenience with an acquaintance. But when she goes to the cabin for Christmas with his family, turns out his sister is the girl that she fell in love with last Christmas. This book is so cute, so fun. I was really worried there was going to be a love triangle, which is like my least favorite trope. I hate love triangles. They just never work out well. Luckily, was not the case at all, which was great. Even though it is single POV, both Ellie and Jack's character just really like fleshed out, and the bits that you do see of like Jack as she like becomes vulnerable with Ellie, really beautiful. I did just have several moments where I'm like, can all these characters just talk to each other and we wouldn't be having all of these problems? But alas, then there wouldn't really be a story, so you know, there's that. Next is Make a Scene by Mimi Grace. This was narrated by Adeline Ojo and Manuel Ingram. Retta's family has just been pitying her ever since her cousin and ex-boyfriend announced their engagement, which like really shitty of her cousin. To get people off of her back, she says that she is seeing someone. She is not. She convinces the very, very attractive boxing gym owner who works right next to the bakery that she owns to pretend to be her boyfriend for the duration of the like wedding festivities. I think it was a great balance of sweet and steamy, but the book is really short and I just wish it was a little bit longer because I felt like there needed to be more tension drawn out between the two of them. My biggest complaint, which is just like it's not a big deal and I'm sure nobody else cares, but if you have fake dating and you have the two characters staying in the same place, why would you actively avoid the only one bed trope? Why would you do that? Like, it is right there, it is ready for the picking. It's fine. It's fine. Next was the classic literature book club pick, which was Three Swedish Mountain Men by Lily Gold. This is a reverse harem book. This follows Daisy, who runs away from her life after her ex-boyfriend basically created a whole like online smear campaign of her. Runs off to the Swedish mountains. After a series of events, she meets these three very attractive, very like, you know, different sort of men. Yeah, and then it's a reverse harem, so like, you know what happens. Genuinely was a good time. Like, I don't know what it was about the writing style, but it was just so addicting where it got to a certain point where I could not put the book down. I didn't love the dialogue, and I definitely had to suspend my disbelief a couple times for a couple different things. I love the smut. I thought it was great. My only complaint with a lot of like reverse harems is like, why wouldn't it be just like a polyamorous relationship? I think there's just a really missed opportunity of the three guys. Whatever, that's just me. Finally in contemporary is Pool Boy by Nikki Sloan. This was narrated by Tara Langella and Tim Page, who were good. Follows Erica, who discovers that her husband of 20 years has been cheating on her for a very long time. She ends up getting a divorce and decides that she is only going to be living her life from now on for herself. After a chance encounter with her pool boy, she ends up slowly falling for him. They develop a relationship. She gets really into it. He apparently has been in love with her for a very, very long time. The only problem is Troy is about 20 years younger than her and also the son of her best friend. So messy. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this book. I think the writing is great. I've always just enjoyed Nikki Sloan's writing style. I did enjoy the relationship. I thought it was a great mix of sweet and steamy, and when they get vulnerable with each other, it's just really beautiful. I don't love the fact that like they've known each other for a while, but it is like made very clear that he's always kind of like had a crush on her. She obviously didn't even pay him any mind until the day at the pool when he's like in his 20s. He's definitely like an adult. However, there was just some like very fat phobic sort of rhetoric in it that I did not like. I don't know, from the like basically chapter 2, I was like, why are we putting these like unnecessary comments? I don't know, did not like it. And it did like appear a couple other times throughout the story, and all of that just made me just go, why would we do this? Moving on to fantasy books, I read Back in a Spell by Lana Harper. This is the third book in the Thistle Grove Witches series by Lana Harper. After a super awkward first date between Nina and Morty, they realize that they're just too different. They might have like some good sort of chemistry together, but they would never work. However, the next morning, after said super awkward first date between the two of them, they are witch bound, which is basically the witch equivalent to being like tied as soulmates together. And Morty, who is just a normal human person, discovers that he is developing magic powers. I love the idea of this book. There's opposites attract, a sort of like accidentally married kind of sort of thing, and there's like kind of mystery type vibes as they're trying to figure out like what the heck is going on. I also think there are some just really beautiful moments between Nina and Morty. However, I just constantly found myself wanting more. The way that it's set up at the beginning, they do not like each other. They do not get along. And that is almost immediately lost. Like there isn't like a slow sort of like, oh, look at all these things that we do actually have in common and we like clearly care for each other, all this stuff. It just like, not even a quarter into the book, it's like, oh look, suddenly we're like in love with each other. I just would have loved to see more of them wanting each other but not wanting to want each other, if that makes sense. I also felt like the end was really rushed and there weren't appropriate sort of consequences for some of the actions that especially Nina made throughout the book. Yeah, I'm still gonna read book 4 because I think it'll be interesting, but I don't know. I really wanted to like this one. Next is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fairies by Heather Fawcett. This follows Professor Emily Wilde as she goes to this like super northern remote town to study the fairy folk there. She discovers that there is some sort of darker magic in play, and while she tries to keep herself removed to just be like there to observe things, she can't help but find herself involved. In addition, her rival professor, also kind of her only friend, Bramblebee shows up, and Emily is convinced there is a lot more to Bramblebee than meets the eye. I would say this is definitely a cozy fantasy, but with stakes, and it has a really great like romance subplot to it. I wouldn't say romance is the main aspect of it, but there's definitely a subplot in there. I love that it's written as journal entries from Emily. It is definitely a like character driven book, and as much as Emily tries to be a unbiased observer, she very much is not, and throws her opinion into this like journal that she's writing quite freely. Also just loved kind of the opposites of Emily and Bamblebee. I cannot say his name properly. Emily is very much a like matter-of-fact type of person. She has trouble like adhering to social norms. She is very keen on patterns, and like I think she's very definitely like at least somewhat neurodivergent coded. Bumblebee is her exact opposite. He's super charming, very extroverted. He very easily like leans into the social norms and loves being the center of attention. We get this like really great grumpy sunshine dynamic between the two of them. Love the formatting of the book. Like I said, it is written as journal entries, and we get like some really fun footnotes that like makes it feel like this world of the Fae is just a subject of study in this world, which is really cool because it's like cited sources where she'll like mention something and then have a footnote of like, oh, in this article written by this person about the fairy. It's just really fun. I think that it could have gone even further with that. I wanted to feel more like I was actually reading a journal. I wanted more of those like what is it called? Epistolary features of like just, you know, bits and things that you put into a journal, because there were times where it would go into like, is this a journal entry or is this someone just like writing in first person POV? You know what I mean? All that aside, I loved the atmosphere of the book and the characters, and I'm very excited because it just set up like a whole series of books perfectly. Moving on to dark romance books. The first one is Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I know a lot of people have been on me to read this, and I have been very resistant for a very long time. This was narrated by Felicity Monroe and Rupert Hawthorne. It's a dark, sort of inspired by Peter Pan mafia romance type vibes. It involves Hook, who wants revenge on Peter Michaels, who like just totally destroyed his life when he was like a kid. And we have Wendy Michaels, who is Peter's daughter, who Hook intends to use as part of his revenge, but very quickly finds that he's falling for her. I genuinely had a great time with this book. Honestly, the smut, I hate saying this, it was a little more vanilla than what I was expecting, because people were talking about it like it was kind of crazy, and I'm like, it's not really that crazy. The plot was pretty predictable, and our female main character was a little bit on the like not like other girls type vibe going on. However, I really liked the banter between the two of them, and just the chemistry that they had was really great. Last but definitely not least is Radiance by Katie Robert. This is the fourth book in the Dark Olympus series. It follows Apollo, who needs to gather information on Hector, who is the newest arrival to Olympus. He asks Cassandra, his assistant, to be his like +1 to this week-long house party on Hector's estate. In exchange, Zeus has agreed to give her a ton of money and help her finally leave Olympus for good. This book has every trope that I love. We got fake dating, she's grumpy, he's sunshine. We got mutual pining. We have, of course, only one bed, as there should be. What I just absolutely loved about Apollo and Cassandra's relationship is that they're very like soft and caring for each other, but they also aren't afraid to call each other out on their shit. And of course they have some just really, really great banter. It established just this wonderful connection between the two of them that left me just constantly wanting more. I feel like certain things could have gone a lot farther, just committed a little bit more. Also, some things in the timeline were just super confusing. I could not figure out how much time had passed at all. So the relationship, great. The actual like plot, not the best. This one also, you like absolutely have to have read the past 3 books in the series. You cannot read this book as a standalone. It would be way too confusing, and that's just how it's going to be for the rest of the books from now on in this series. I am also just very excited about what was established in the book that sets up the like next whatever 6 books in this series. Okay, there we go. Those were all the books that I read in the month of January. If you read any of these books, go ahead and let me know down below. I would always love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit subscribe. As always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, bye!